This is a great analysis on cycle analysis, and you're going to like this lesson that I bring you. It's on the Dow Jones Transportation Average. What's interesting is that this was recorded on Thursday night, of course, before the market opened and had a big move. And I think you're going to see how well this played out. So be sure to watch this and great lessons that you will see in our style of analysis. Here is cycle analysis on the Dow Jones Transportation Average. This is a cycle analysis lesson. I'm going to break down the analytical process looking at the Dow Jones Transportation Average. We're going to start out looking at the weekly chart, and then I'm going to bring in the daily chart. And in the weekly chart, I'll be looking at what are the dominant forces that affect what's going on in the shorter term daily chart. And then I'll show you how the information on the two time frames work together to give you valuable insights on the condition of the market at different times. Let's switch over now, and this is the Dow Jones Transportation Average. What we're looking at is DJT, and this is a weekly, and we're also going to be looking and getting help from our reversal scout, which is that line that's in there. Reversal scout is a proprietary indicator, and we use that to help us also as a guide. Not only is it scouting out changes in the market, but also as a guide for cycle analysis. So I'm going to bring in the cycle analysis now so that you can see the work that's done on here, and then we'll do it step by step when we get to the daily chart. So here is the weekly chart in here, and this is just great information when you look at that. Now, you see over here, we're going way back in here to September of 22. So we're looking at almost 3 years of trading in here. What I have in here is, on the bottom, are the cycle brackets. Now, those brackets are a drawing tool, and they help us visualize where the energetic movement is in the market. The cycles are a rhythm that's in the market. That's actually the flow of money, and the flow of money as it affects the price action is valuable to understand, because if the price action is such that it's tracing out higher peaks and higher troughs, then that's usually an uptrend. You have money that's flowing in, and usually under those conditions, you will have the reversal scout moving up in a positive way. And then when the reversal scout turns negative, when a cycle peaks, as you see like right over here, then you can measure, well, how long the decline will be based on where you believe the rhythm will take it down time-wise. So let's analyze this, and also I want you to notice that I've added something a little different down here. These ovals, those shows you where the rising phases start, and the yellow one where the declining phases start in the individual cycles. So you get a good feel for that. So if you look at over here where this cycle is rising right over there, so I'm showing you here where the reversal scout turned up and told us that this cycle was in a rising phase right there. And it rises now until it peaks. Now it can peak anywhere in the cycle. When it peaks early, as you see right in this cycle right over here, and then gets underneath that level where it started, well, that tells you it's likely to fall right into the time frame as it did right over here. So you can see this cycle here and this cycle here are kind of mirror images of each other. This one was a right-hand translation. It peaked way on the right side. This was a left-hand translation. It translated the market to us, in other words, told us that it was peaking early and then fell right through this time frame right over here. So you can see the rising phase, the declining or corrective phase, the rising phase, and the declining and negative phase, because this was a broken cycle right over here. A positive cycle here, a positive cycle here. You can see those as they line up very well right here. Now look at this cycle, and you could see that what happened was that this one fell short. In other words, it hit a resistance level, which was just about halfway up there. I don't have the resistances in there right now. And then peaked early and came down and broke that cycle low support. You'll note that what you had here was a left shoulder and a head and a right shoulder, that head and shoulders top, and head and shoulders are formed by the cycle rhythms, as you can see right in there. And almost every chart pattern is formed by the rhythms that are in these markets. So if you look right over here, you can see that this market was rising right there, and the energies were still pointing up, and you built a little triangle right in here. And then when it broke out of there, well, it was still a rising phase, and you can see this right-hand translation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in a little tighter right now, just so you can see where we are right now. So this cycle, these two blue lines that are right over there, are what we call the cycle low timing zone. It's a timing zone. Usually it's from the ideal, it's about 3 bars either side of that ideal. So that means the trough can come in that area. Now we get information about how that's forming based on what we see on the shorter time frames. You'll notice in here that the reversal scout over here failed on this right shoulder, and when you broke that cycle low, it set it up for the decline perfectly through that period. Then when the reversal scout turned up, you got into this rising phase right over here, and you have this very positively configured cycle in this right-hand translation. So right now we're in this rising phase, but you can see that it's not confirmed because the reversal scout is still pointing to the downside. Under a very strong setup, like you had over here, the reversal scout may not turn down very far as you get into the correction, but in this case it hasn't even turned up. So we're not seeing any real traction yet setting up in this rising phase. We would expect the highest probability would be that it would test or take out that last high at 16,506. As you can see, we're projecting up here. So when we put in these projections, it's showing you what we believe to be the highest probability to occur. Right now, the highest probability is that this will get traction and then continue to move upwards. You can see in here, as I expand this back out, these beautiful cyclical rhythms in here, the information that we get from the reversal scout, and also how we get a sense for the market condition. But this is only the weekly chart. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go through the phases of analysis using the daily chart. And I think that will help you also see what's going on. So let's switch over to the daily chart. I'm just going to grab this right over here, and now I'm going to switch over to the daily. So the daily chart is over here on the right side, and I'm going to bring in the analytical process that we're seeing here. But before I do that, just picture these cycles that are on the bottom right over here, because what I want to do is I'm going to bring over these rhythms onto the daily chart so you can see how they affect the action. The longer the time frame, the more influence it has on the overall price action. So you can see here where the price action was very powerful right up over here, and here's that little triangular shape that we talked about. And this couldn't come down much because this had a strong upward force going on the weekly chart. So now let's switch over to the daily chart. Now on the daily chart we have the reversal scout. We also have the slim ribbon. We have the slim ribbon PO on the bottom, which just has great information, and I'll give you some examples of that as we move forward in here. And on the bottom right over here, which only has a look back period of 6 months, is the option bias study, which essentially tells you if you had option positions on, what direction you want to bias them. And here you could see it was telling you bias to the long side in here, and now right over here it's telling you biasing to the short side. So let's look at the steps of how we do this analysis as I bring this in through the process of what I look at. So let's take a look right over here at my next step. What would I do right now? So now I said I was going to bring over the weekly cycle brackets, and that's what I've done right over here. So you can see in here that rhythm that is in here based on the weekly rhythms, and I brought that in because those have a dominant force. You can see in here where this got below this low, and then the dominant force was moving to the downside right over here. you can pick up that the slim ribbon, which turns the bars red at this point, is giving you a negative reading here on the daily chart, and this comes from the influence of the decline in the weekly that you have right over here. So what's the next phase right over here after I've brought forth the information from the weekly chart? Now, if you were doing this analysis as a side by side, as I do often right over here, then you see that this cycle right over here is this cycle right over here. So you can go back and forth from one chart to the other one doing it. But I wanted to bring that weekly one because I think it's valuable in here looking at it. So now let's go to the next one right over here, which is where I'm adding in, actually, that's not the one I wanted to bring. No, that is the one. Okay, sorry about that. So let's go back right over here. So now what I've done is I've looked at the weekly right over here, and I've broken it down into the daily. So this is the next step that you see right there. And the daily cycle, right, this is the weekly cycle right there, and this is the daily cycle right over here. So we've added in the cycles for the daily, which happened to be lining up 1/3 of the length of the weekly. So on the daily, as I bring it over, it's 72 bars right over there, and it breaks down into 3 24-bar cycles. Now, those are average cycles. Doesn't mean everyone is going to exactly have its trough at the right spot. This one happens to be perfect. As you see, the trough right over here, and then the trough right over here, and then the trough here. Now, one thing to notice is that when you have the minor cycle and the dominant cycle aligned is when you get the biggest moves. So in other words, here, where this turned negative and both of them were pushing down here, you got a very strong break right there. So that is, you're not always going to get a very strong move to the downside, but that is the alignment that will give you the strongest move. You can see that right over here where the slim ribbon turned red, the bars turned red, and that gave you that good downside move. Also, the slim ribbon PO was giving you these momentum resumption signals right there, which was giving you warnings. Here you can see the momentum resumption signals here, which was giving you upside warnings or upside indications right over there. So it's absolutely great. And then you could see in here the alignments where you had a warning in here. If it turns orange, as it did right over there, it gives you the bottom warning on the option bias indicator. And this was saying keep your option positions biased long. This says keep your option positions biased short. Let's bring in the next step right over here, which is now I'm going to start to explain to you how these cycles show up, the energetics. So you can see what I've done is I've drawn a channel in here. Actually, the channel could be right on the price action, but I wanted you to see very clearly how this works. And that is this cycle came up to this point, and in the third minor cycle and the dominant cycle corrective period, they came down together. So that's what the energies look like in here. You can see that right in here and right in here. Now, this is a bullishly configured cycle, which is from the weekly. And you could see that as it was rising, it was affecting these cycles right in here. How is it affecting it? Let's go to the next drawing right over here. And that now has the minor cycles on there also. So you can see as this cycle was negative, it was causing the cycles to give you the minor ones or the daily ones to give you negative shapes. And here where the upside momentum was powerful and strong, the minor cycles were forming in positive shapes. You can see that right over there. So where are we right now? Well, the corrective process right over here, in other words, this downward force and this downward force wasn't strong. Even though the reversal scout turned over right over there on the daily chart and the slim ribbon and slim ribbon PO went red, there wasn't a lot of time left in here. So because the translation was so far on the right side, it only left a little time to fall. And you can see how that lined up right over here. Now we're pushing upward right over here on the minor cycle, upward on the dominant cycle, and that gives you this upward move. But you can see it's not getting traction yet. In alignment with what we saw here on the weekly, with the reversal scout being negative, this downward force is playing on this. Normally, when you get this bullish configuration here and then get into this next rising phase, it can pop very hard to the upside. You see over here where it did not do that, and then it started to set up a negative cycle structure where the minor and dominant cycles were moving down. We don't know if that's happening right in here, but you can see where this is labeled for our members at 15,054. If it were to get under there, then we would know that this had turned down at some point as it broke that, and if that were the case, then we would be projecting like this to the downside, which then gives you a sense of how we use the messages that we have from the weekly or the daily chart together. So in this case, if I look at this rising phase right over here, and I'm just going to zoom in right there for you to see, and this rising phase right over here, so I'll zoom in on that there, this upward force was pushing to the upside here on the daily, and it formed this positive cycle, as you see right over here. So the message to us from the daily chart to the weekly chart is that the upward trend still exists. That would say that because this is an upward force, because this is a bullish configuration, that the next cycle will at least test or go higher high. Then when this cycle completed here and it began to move up, we believe it's going to surpass these highs, and it did that right over there. So we get the messages from the weekly, which shows us the dominant forces to the upside, the message from the daily, which shows us in these shapes that there's still upward force going on because it's creating these positive cycle patterns right in here, and that gives us the sense that where we are right now is that we should be expecting upside, but we don't have the confirmation over here on the reversal scout, and we don't have this moving up to the high, so we're suspicious. And of course, when we look at this, here we are on the 22nd of August, in case you're looking at this clip months from now, on the 22nd of August 2025, that we have a condition where the stock market has been very strong, led by AI, and it has now gone into a rotation where the secondary stocks, the third tier stocks, are getting bought along with value stocks, and that would also fall into the category of a lot of the airlines. And in this case, you can see, well, you're just barely getting an upward turn here. You have the slim ribbon kind of neutralizing, laying on itself right there. And it's just turning a little bit green right over here, but this is still negative. We haven't really gotten an upward turn. So I'm using all of this information as the sum of the evidence. Say, the bullish side of this has to prove itself. If not, then you have this downturn right over here. If the bullish side does prove itself, then these are going to extend upward further, and those energies will be going up, and we'll have a reason to be positive. And then what will happen will be this will form like this, and I'm just going to duplicate the trend line, and then you can see I'm just going to change this to a dotted line right there. So you'll get an idea of what the projection would be. This would then be here, it would form into a bullish shape right over there, and then the next one would be pointing to a higher high going up right over here, and that's how that would be forming, as you can see. And then we would know, because the momentum on the weekly chart would have turned up, this will be having a positive formation, and then that would be positive. Again, if this broke this trend line right over here when it came down, and then this was a negative shape right over there, then we would be looking at this type of a negative shape forming here on these shorter term charts right there. So we get all kinds of incredibly valuable information when you look at that. So again, this is the weekly chart right over here. I'm going to blow that out for you to see right over there. You can go to AskSlim.com to the top of the web page to workshop tab and click on cycle analysis workshop. There's a free video there, some free information about our workshop and about cycle analysis. So I think you'll find it very valuable to do that. This is the way the weekly forms. It is the dominant, and this is the daily. It is the weekly we happen to overlap on here, but often what we have are cycles that are only unique to the daily chart when we do these daily charts. We have the slim ribbon PO. We have over here, which is the slim ribbon PO. The reversal scout, the slim ribbon PO are level 4 indicators for AskSlim.com. The slim ribbon right over here is a free indicator, and it's available on 4 different platforms. So if you have questions on that, you can write to team@AskSlim.com. What I'm using it on right over here is the Thinkorswim platform. So we have a downloaded script for Thinkorswim on our site and some information videos on the slim ribbon. So really valuable. And the option bias indicator on the bottom, which is just a phenomenal multiple time frame indicator that really helps you stay on the right side of the markets. And right now we're waiting for this bullish to prove itself. And it's not making it right now. So the question is, if the stock market gets into a correction or gets a little softer than it is right now, will this break that level, 15,054, 15,054? And if it does, it's going to turn this down. It's going to set up a negative condition, which then would go down towards the end of October or the beginning of November. That is the cycle analysis lesson using the Dow Jones Transportation Average, and I hope you found that incredibly valuable. If you have any comments on that, write to team@AskSlim.com.